In this episode, we're going to be talking more about Hayden Deegan than Jet. For some, that might be incredibly surprising. For others, not so much. So this is Deegan, Moto 1. Moto 1 reminded me a lot of Washugal, where he was just on fire. He was scrubbing. He was staying low. He looked aggressive. I mean, when does he not look aggressive? However, that first moto, he was attacking literally every obstacle, every downhill, every corner, every jump. It was fun to watch. And then we all saw what happened with the restart. Anyway, I digress. This is one of those tabletops, and Deegan is scrubbing. Just a perfect execute scrub, and then he decides to do a Bam Bam Barsha-like brake tap. Here, notice his brake foot, that right foot, moves over, taps it just briefly. Can't really tell that the front end drops too much because he's probably just wanting this front wheel not to fly up on him further. So it was subtle. It wasn't meant to be this gigantic, like I said, Barsha-like or Josh Hansen, just front wheel way, way down, almost endo-like. We'll watch that in real time so that you guys can see it. It's subtle. Boom. But it's enough just to get the picture where it just stops that front end from going up anymore. Just a little just check. You know, he honestly could be using that brake tap to just get that bike back in line. I know normally you're going to grab the throttle to get the rear wheel to spin to get it back in here, but it's almost as if sometimes when you grab a front brake in a corner, it's going to stand the bike back up and you're going to be able to make an adjustment. Here, I believe that's probably what he's just looking for. Another sick whip by Deegan. And did he notice what happened? Well, it wasn't that he brake tapped because that was him shifting down because it's the opposite foot. But I'm leaving in there the sick whip just because it shows the confidence that this kid has. He just feels comfortable. He is now a professional, and this far into the season, he's not riding like he doesn't belong. He's riding like he should be owning the class, which is impressive, which is definitely impressive. But what happens afterwards is most noticeable. Right here. Boom. Do you see that front end push on him? Front end is pushing. Do you notice where his body is and his hips? He's definitely looking forward, which is smart. You want to look where you go. I mean, the bike is going to travel where you look. But what does he do to adjust this? Because this is in somewhat of a braking area. You know, yes, he's accelerating, but look at him. He moves his hips to weight that outside peg so that he is on top of the bike. Yes, his elbows never drop because you can't control a motorcycle when your elbows are down low. You have to be on top of it. You just have more leverage. It's just plain physics. And here, if he's riding on top of the bike, he's not going to go down with the bike. He can literally push the bike back up with his hips, and that's what he does. So here, it's pushing, and then he adjusts to start weighting that outside peg, moves his ass over, accelerates a little bit to get that back end to get back in line, to push that front wheel back straight. And we see this time and time again at Bud's Creek. I will show some different examples. We're going to pay attention to AP, not Jet, up at the top. And I want you to notice his front end. See what happens. So we'll go through it. This is a little bit different scenario because of the fact that these guys are starting to start braking. Yes, Jet is up here accelerating. You're going to accelerate down the hill, and then you're eventually going to have to start hitting the brakes so that you can make the corner, right? Well, Jet sometimes isn't known for braking, but I digress. We're watching AP. Notice that front end. Watch what happens. Starts pushing right there. Starts pushing right there. And what is he doing? Because he's braking. He's got enough forward momentum that this should push the bike further, but he needs to tighten his core, really squeeze hard with his knees to keep this bike straight. A little bit different scenario where he's not accelerating. He's not in a position to where he can lean the bike because he's turning. He's literally going straight, and the bike is trying to go a different direction. So here, this is a prime example as to why and how fit these guys are, because every millisecond of riding a motorcycle while racing in these kind of conditions, your body is reacting to stuff coming at it. It's flexing here, it's moving here, it's loosening up here, and you've got all sorts of things feeding against you, especially the terrain. And so they're having to make adjustments on the fly. And this is just over 10,000 hours of being proficient at something to where he knows subconsciously how to react to something like this, which is just cool to watch these guys for that reason. Just squeezes real hard. You can't even tell that there was really a mistake going on that could have been a crash. Last example of pushing the front end. You've got two professionals. You got AP and Jet. Jet has been setting up this last couple corners, and this was probably the coolest pass of Budds Creek. But notice both the riders. AP will first look at Jet to see, hey, does he have the line on me? Then Jet looks back. These guys are feeding off of each other. They are reacting to each other. The awareness that these guys have is out of this world, ubiquitous. It's everywhere. That's why I feel like electric bikes aren't going to be that big of a deal, because these guys are going to be able to notice where they are on the track. Anyway, they're seeing if they have the line on each other, and it's not until Jet actually scrubs lower, stays lower, and is able to make the pass. But here, we'll do it in real time so that you see what's going on. Outside in, beautifully executed. But what's more important is how he actually made that pass on the outside. He overjumps here a little bit, and he just starts accelerating. And watch Jet's front end as he is going over some of these deep, deep ruts. It pushes, and it starts washing. And something here, if you are not on the gas, that front is going to compress further. It's going to grab. It's going to make the rear end bounce and high side, and you're going to go for a not so fun ride. So in this scenario, you have to just, again, be squeezing the motorcycle and pushing through the stuff. So almost like a dozer, you're just trying to push away and accelerate. That's the only way you're going to do it, is with torque. And that's exactly what he does, is he just accelerates all the way through. One more time here. Let me take a deep breath, because this is a long-winded explanation about sitting down. Budds Creek is one of those tracks where there's a lot of elevation changes. So you see a lot of riders sitting down. Yes, they do it for multiple reasons. You're doing it for a seat bounce, for a distance, getting a little bit extra air. And these 250s have a hard time getting over a lot of these jumps because of the lack of horsepower, just lack of bottom end torque. But there's another reason why these riders are sitting down. They're sitting down because they're saving energy. There's a lot of uphills. And therefore, if you're standing up on these uphills, you're going to put excess pressure on your forearms. And if your forearms fill with blood, they're going to create lactic acid. And you're not going to be able to use your front brake and your clutch lever. And your lap times are going to go down the poop hole. So we don't want that to happen. And therefore, you see these guys sit down more often on those, because they can squeeze the bike. They can get themselves in a good position to where they're releasing pressure from these arms, because you don't ride a bike with your arms. You ride your bike with your legs. They also sit down as if like a truck bed. If you're trying to get out of a hole or something, you put a lot of weight, a drag strip, you put a lot of stuff in the rear end so that it's going to give you more traction. You see these guys sitting down and accelerating. This is Joe and Deegan. And look at their arms. They're bent back on the bike. You'd think that these guys are holding on tight, but no, they are not. They are letting the inertia do everything for them. If they were to try to hold themselves up going uphill, this is a lot of tension on the arms that doesn't need to happen. You put them back here, you can focus more on squeezing the bike, and you can, do magic fingers up here, because they're not really holding you onto this guy. And, ironically, they start preloading on some of the big guys, not seat bouncing, where they'll be standing up to try to get a little bit extra pop to it. And that's what both these guys do. And then you'll notice they go back to sitting down. And they go back to sitting down and landing on that rear brake. What are they doing? It is a fluid transitional process. You're going from A to D without B, C in the way. And what I mean by that is, why land, then sit down, then put your feet on the brakes, then leg out, then accelerate? No, you want to do it all in one fluid motion, because you're all about trying to save time. That's what they're doing. But Deegan lands sitting down, lands on that rear brake, and is able to go. I think I've got another example of Faulkner here doing this thing too. So here's Faulkner. Boom, moves, sits down, sets up. Look, doesn't even touch that foot peg. Doesn't even touch. Just totally misses it. Lands on the other foot peg, which is the rear brake. And he's ready to go. We'll do real time because everybody loves real time. Speaking of brakes, why not take a moment and do some self-care? Go shop at puremoto.com, search for 1.5 million items in stock, whether it's gear or parts. It's easy. Just search for what you're looking for, click on it. Using the Pure Moto network, it'll show you who has it in stock. If you want to just drive, call them up, say, hey, hold this sucker. Or if you want it shipped to you, you can also do that as well. Make sure you're shopping at puremoto.com. Back to Deegan and Shimoto. Here, watch Deegan. What is he doing? Scrub, over jump, sitting down, gets back, arms out, push back. And this is why he was going so fast, is he wasn't slowing down that much. Here he goes, scrubbing off of freaking everything. And then he over jumps this next section, this next bump that is supposed to slow you down. You saw pretty much every other rider check up, brake a little bit more, and take the more inside, like what Joe's doing here. But no, Deegan is just getting off the brakes early and just letting the suspension move and the bike just take forward momentum and using inertia. And he's just staying, even if it's a half a mile an hour faster, it's still faster. And he just had, this was just a Washougal moment, in my opinion, for that Moto 1 until what happened with the restart. But here, we'll watch it in real time one more time. Notice, gets back on the bike so he can squeeze, a little transition there. And I have to show this because it is pretty epic. And I know a lot of riders were doing it, privateers especially on press day. Watch Justin Barcia. This is literally right after the start and really where the last clip was with Deegan. Barcia is going to take an acceleration bump and wheel tap. That was probably the coolest way of going over this thing that I saw because he case, wheel taps, and scrubs all at the same time. Like, how do you have that ass end bounce and then as opposed to just trying to be like, oh, no, it's not going to endo me, you turn it into a scrub. That was probably the most epic way of going about this, even though he didn't really clear it over, because we could watch Jet. And what does Jet do? Jet makes it very simple and fluid, all the way up and over. This is probably the thing that scares me the most about the technique changing, is it's keeping your feet on the pegs. But you got to make sure that your toes are pointed in, because if they're out, they're going to get caught by ruts, dirts, bumps, you name other riders. Who knows? Corner markers, whether they have a heartbeat or not. Maybe that was a bad joke. Anyway, we've got Chase Sexton here, and he just stands up through this corner. Feet on the pegs, and it just baffles me all year. Like, how are you not getting your foot ripped off? How are you not twisting your knee? How is this happening? Yes, I completely get that you keep your body weight more centered, and it's just that whole transition thing where if you take away one of the steps, you can just focus on going faster and just ultimately go faster. Yes, very minute millisecond type stuff, but it all adds up. It just scares me when I see this because their toes have got to just be glued to the frame so that they don't tear their ACL. This has come from somebody that's torn his ACL 4 times, and we're like, "Argh." Here, we'll have another one of where Barcia does it. Track changed a little bit so it doesn't seem as deep. And honestly, I like the way Barcia does it here because he literally jumps into the rut. And then he sticks his leg out. And this is just for a counterbalance. It's not really there. It's there to prevent him from just drifting wider. Here, we'll do that one more time so you can see it all. See him jump into the rut. Boom. And was Barcia's entrance into motocross as impressive as Ken Roczen? No, it wasn't. But was it still impressive? Absolutely, it was. And you got to make the connection that Kenny did it at the beginning of the series, and Barsha's doing it at the end. And Barsha had time off the bike because of injury, where Kenny did not. He was just taking time off, and he was still riding a bunch because he was doing World Supercross. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy this stuff. If you do, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification icon, because I will continue to make these. And these are literally the most time-consuming videos that I make. So if you can help me out, I will sincerely appreciate it. It makes it all worthwhile. Till next time, keep it WFO. Bye.